Dan, is that you coming in as 334?
So,
Okay.
so yeah. So do you want to pause the recording? Do you know how to do that?
Yep. I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'm
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, Section 18, and the governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. See the instructions at the top of this agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Law 7C 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body, or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. And are you aware of any recordings?
Not that I'm aware of anybody who is attendee recording. You could actually just do a thumbs up or raise your hand or let us know.
But we are
No, but
recording.
nobody else. Yes, but we are recording. The
Yeah.
town is recording. Yes.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. Anne,
I'm here.
Richard,
I'm here.
Madonna,
I'm here.
and I'm Philip Orenstein, and I'm present, and Milena is away this meeting. Okay. Approval of the minutes for the meeting of June 21st. They're included in the packet. That draft has been posted on the town website in accordance with the new procedures. There was one change I made there probably a month ago or so that is already in there. Don't ask me to remember what that was, but it was just a correction. But do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll
I move
make a,
we-
oh, go
I
ahead,
move we
Richard.
approve the minutes.
Second,
Second, any discussion?
This is Anne. I guess I do want to make one point on item number 5. 5A, Roman numeral 2, or little, what is little Roman numeral 2? It says, Vivori stated all true arm's length sales. And I don't even recall what an arm's length sale is. I wonder if we could just change that to all true sales and take out arm's length, or put arm's length in quote, because I don't know what that means.
Arm's length sales. Yeah,
So maybe just put that in quotes.
yeah,
So-
no, that makes sense. It's his term of art.
I know. I just, for a reader, I would have no idea what that means. So if you're okay, I can make that and send them in. Phil,
That's
you
certainly
okay?
fine by me.
Okay. So can we
Any further
then,
discussion? Okay, so the motion on the table is to approve the minutes with the correction that Anne just suggested. We'll take a vote. Anne,
I vote aye.
Richard,
Aye.
Madonna,
aye.
and I'm aye as well. They're approved with that one change. And will you, Anne, will you email Stacy with that change?
Yeah, I'll email Stacy. I mean, I think I can make the change, right? And then I'll just CC her.
I'm not sure if you have the latest draft, so
Oh, okay. So I'll email.
it's probably
her.
best to let her know. She's
Yeah, I'll do
terrific.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
send
And
it
this
to her
isn't
and she'll
on
take care of
her.
it.
this isn't on her. I think it's a term that no one's gonna know what it means.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, any other committee member announcements or statements that they would like to make? Anne,
No,
Richard,
No.
Madonna?
No,
I'm all covered on the agenda myself. Okay. Next item is we're going to add up the agenda item. We're going to move up the agenda items that touch upon Sue Cartmel per her request, given her schedule. This will come up later, but obviously she's announced that she's her resignation and she's moving on to something else. And I just wanted to, before we speak with her, just thank her for her professionalism and expertise. And you've obviously, and with your professionalism, you've also resigned in a very convenient way to the town, and that you've been able to stay and finish up the year's books and leave in a very, in a relatively calm way, shall we say. Obviously, you'll be leaving a significant hole in the staff, but I wanted to thank you for your assistance to me and to the committee since I've been involved. And obviously best of luck in your future ventures. And I appreciate you joining us tonight. You really didn't have to. Let's see. So why don't we, yeah, the first item that is touches upon you is the continued discussion of the budget policy. So just to rewind the tape again there briefly. I think 2 months ago, I submitted my own suggested changes to the budget policy. And it was mostly a series of additions and clarifications. And just again, big picture, my objective is to make sure that some very important issues that these are my opinions, obviously, that there are certain important budget issues that perhaps require a little more of a historical context in the budget binder that goes to the select board and the finance committee. And also some things that were added to the process late last year were, for example, information regarding the uses of free cash flow, that we try to include that in more detail in the book up front. So I was just trying to make things a little, maybe a little more organized and give some of the newer members of the committees a little more historical context in terms of what's in the binder. The process to change the budget policy requires the approval of both this committee and the select board. So I'm just 1/10 of that process. I wanted to get Sue's feedback on those changes, since she's obviously a very important part of the budget process. But since she's moving on, candidly, while she took the time to give me some comments, I'm not sure we need to spend too much time on them, given it's going to be a challenge for your successor. Your comments are included in blue on the markup I put in the packet, but again, I'm not inclined to discuss it in great detail tonight. Anne, you're raising your hand.
yeah, thank you, Phil. So I guess I also wanted just to say how much I've really enjoyed working with Sue. And Sue, you taught me so much, actually just about everything about the municipal budgeting process and municipal finances. And I think you've been working for the town pretty much around the same time that I came on the committee. So for me, everything's changing, and I will really miss working with you. And thank you for everything you've done for the committee, for the town, for people, the residents of the town. We're really grateful. So I just want you to know that. That's it. And we can't hear you tonight, right? Yeah. Yeah, Sue's having her microphone problems.
Okay.
But I think I
Well, she's
agree.
probably saying how great we all are at this time. We just can't hear her, right?
Exactly,
Okay. All right.
exactly. Yeah, we can, if that could be in the minutes, even though it wasn't said, no. So I do agree that I think this is, I guess, what is the timeline for this? And Steve, do you want to be promoted to a panelist for this discussion? And Pete, so Steve Bannon is an attendee. So Sue's going to log out and try to come back on as an attempt to. And I think Steve, I'm going to promote to panelist for at least a moment.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep. So I guess, Kim, let's just talk about what the timeline is here, because, I mean, Phil, I think you've done I really commend that you've really been on top of us not leaving this to the last minute. So when do we need to vote on a policy, and how would we get this done in a timely manner? Is, I guess, my question.
My thought is that sometime in September, we should have this done.
Mhm.
What we've always done is a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and Select Board, because there's no easy way to do it otherwise. Because if the Select Board, if you make changes and the Select Board doesn't like the changes and have questions, then it goes back to you. And we can be playing ping pong for months.
Well, but would it make sense for us right now to go through some of these and make recommendations to the select board? Or should we just wait and hash it all out in one meeting? That seems like it would be a very long meeting. But I mean, I don't know what other people on the committee have as a preference.
Making recommendations is fine, and then at a joint meeting, we can discuss those recommendations.
Bill, what are your thoughts on the time?
Well, I mean, the time frame sounds fine. It's I certainly agree with the approach that we could make some recommendations for the larger group to discuss. I think that makes total sense. I think another possibility to throw into the pot is that I've discussed very briefly with Mark, and perhaps on a previous committee, is that theoretically we could collectively decide to not have a budget policy. That's one way in theory to handle it. I wouldn't support that approach, but I guess theoretically it's one option that we have.
I guess I want to agree with you. I think not having a policy after having had a policy, I think doing away with a policy requires almost more, I would feel requires more discussion than updating a policy.
Can't that policy just stay in effect as it is now? Oh, did I?
My personal opinion on that is I believe that certain changes should be made. So I personally wouldn't feel comfortable just approving last year's version, but again, it's a committee decision, so I'm just one vote in that process.
Bill, does it have to be approved every single year?
It does, yes,
Okay, sorry.
yes.
And
I
I
mean-
think one thing that I think in prior years, it's been for a wide variety of reasons, including COVID and other issues and other more important topics, it's been a bit of a last minute scramble to approve the budget policy in the calendar, in the time frame that's been discussed. So my objective with my comments I provided 2 months ago was just to try to get a head start in that process to hopefully avoid that scramble.
I mean, would it make sense for me to put up on the screen the edits that are there now, for us to talk through them, see what, if we have any recommendations to bring to the select board for the joint meeting, and then we don't have to make any decisions at this point because we're just making recommendations.
I think that would be very helpful.
Okay. What do you, others, Bill?
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Okay,
Sounds good.
okay, it's going up. Hold on one second. So, Steve, do you want to stay up as a panelist? It's up to you. I'm fine.
No, you can demote me.
I'm
that's
going to
fine.
demote you. You're being demoted. Sorry to say. So, How do I do this? Give me 1 second. I don't want to remove. I don't want to make you. Well, how do I? give me-
Can't he just mute himself?
Yeah, I think you just take yourself off. Oh, no, there we go. Change role to attendee. Got it. He's gone. Okay. Right.
And while you're putting that up on the screen, does the September 12th select board meeting work for this group?
We are on a road trip to Montana, and we may be back by the 12th. We may not be back by the 12th. Sometime that will depend on the road. So
The next
I-
option would be the September 19th meeting.
I wouldn't be able to make the 19th, but I could make the 12th.
Either work for me.
I can just leave that out there. It doesn't need to be settled tonight, but we can talk about it.
Well,
Joint
if we
session.
had, if we had our consensus together, then we wouldn't need everyone to be at that particular meeting.
Mhm.
But that's just my opinion.
I mean, I guess I would have a slight preference for the 19th, just because we have our meeting on the 20th, and it just means I don't have to block off on 2 different weeks. It's just back to back. So,
Yeah, I propose we pencil in the 19th then for
yeah,
that
sorry,
discussion.
Madonna, but it's just a slight preference.
Okay.
No, don't take it personally. Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to make it larger. All right, can everybody see decently what we've got here?
Yes.
yes,
Okay. So it looks like the first thing is that this statement here, comply with all state regulations, is repeated in 2 places. Is that right, Bill? Was that your edit?
Yeah, these are all the edits in red are mine. The ones
Okay.
in blue are from Sue.
Okay,
Um,
so,
Yeah,
Are you
and this is not a particularly important comment, but
okay,
I think it'll come up later on. It's obviously very important we do this. We should we say it once up front. We don't need to kind of sprinkle it in throughout the agreement, but we're all in the right, all rowing in the same direction on that point.
That makes sense.
agreed.
okay. So we'll leave it there and then deal with it later?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that, you would like to add in support affordable housing under our priorities?
Right?
It is an
think-
important priority of the town. I agree with that.
I would support it as well. So I think,
I would too.
Mark, do you want to, or Sue? No, okay.
I think it's also a bit of a trailing thing. We are doing it. So-
Right, exactly. Yep, yep.
It's good to say, yes, this is an important policy. We are already working on it, right?
And then, so I think, Phil, what is it? You want to add in some language about free cash, is that right?
Right, so this is and again, I think this is a little tougher for Richard and perhaps Madonna, who weren't knee deep in the process from last couple of years, but I think that the sort of how the town uses its free cash at the end of the year it has taken up a fairly substantive part of our budget discussions, and it's pretty important and requires thought and input from the two committees. Many towns will have an existing policy as to how they allocate their free cash. We have, to the best of my knowledge, we have elected to not do that. So the question is, would we want to consider some objective statement about how we intend to use our free cash? And what that really means is, how much do we spend and how much do we keep in reserve for future years? And back at the end of the document, I copied some examples from some other towns about their free cash policy.
I mean, I guess I will say, I think this is something to recommend to the select board that we put in a free cash policy. I'm a little nervous about any policy right now, just because it would be new for us that has a specific percentage point. I might be a little more comfortable for this first go round to say we strive to generate free cash in an amount that is a reasonable percentage or is a conservative percentage of our annual budget, rather than put an amount. It makes me, I just don't know where this amount is coming from. So,
Well, that amount, I believe, that comes from, I didn't make it very clear, but that comes from a
oh
state,
no,
a state source. And
Well-
again, it's a link that you can't access, but it came from
Oh.
a state source, so I didn't make it
oh,
up.
oh, no, I understand that. I guess I'm asking is sort of, well, is this what we've been doing? I mean, is it, are we above that? Are we below that? I just.
No, we've typically been above that, yeah.
Yeah, so I just don't think, then I don't think we can say this is something we want to do. I mean, I guess we could say it's a goal, but if we're constantly not making it, I don't think that. we should
No,
say
we've
that.
made the goal. Actually, we're on the other end of the spectrum. We typically have
Oh,
had
so we're
larger
below.
free cash balances than many other towns. And there are many reasons for that, and they're all, they're all good reasons. Typically, we've
Okay.
been conservative, and some of our revenue is hard to project, particularly the cannabis revenue.
I see. Okay,
Um,
so we
but,
we
yeah, so-
exceed this goal. In a
So
positive
we've
way.
exceeded the goal, but
Okay,
we don't, again, it's a big part of the budget process that we haven't tried to factor into this particular budget.
well, what if we
Yeah.
said here, if we strive to generate free cash in amount no less than 3 to 5 or 3% of our annual budget?
Um,
Because it says equal, right? So equal means exactly at, that's the thing. It doesn't say less than or greater than, it says equal to.
What I would suggest for this point is, why don't we just leave the numbers blank and just say, and I think basically say that I would advocate that we should be making, we should consider having a statement on our free cash policy in our budget policy.
Could
I'd
I,
like
make-
that.
could I make a brief suggestion? It seems that looking at the spreadsheets from the past couple years, we are meeting this area, 3 to 7% seems to be what we're meeting. Isn't this a statement saying that we should look backwards and see, well, is there any changes we should make in the budget process for the next year if we are exceeding wildly 7%? It's just a suggestion that we try to look at that to see if we are overestimating by a wild percent, which we're not doing. It's just a statement, just a comment.
Mhm, mhm.
We seem to be doing a good job of it so
Right.
far. This is about what we're doing. 3 to 7%, it seems to me. Am I incorrect?
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think that's
Right.
about right.
But that's about right. So this is kind of, it's generating itself by the full prudence that we're currently doing. It's not something, but if we should find that we have 20% free cash, obviously we have to look at it again. Does it need to be stated? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's also true that the next, our next finance director will probably have an opinion on this.
Yeah.
So that's something we need to accommodate. So my proposal, I would propose that we include that statement, 3 to 5%, but just leave the actual numbers blank, and we can have that discussion in a larger group. But
That's
Yeah.
the main point is to
Okay,
include
That's
something
fine.
in here that
Okay.
talks about
For
free cash.
discussion. Mhm.
Okay,
I agree.
I agree as well.
I agree it's hard to place a number on it, but other towns have done that.
Yeah.
And again, at the end of my markup, there's some other examples of that. Okay,
Okay, so, and that goes for this other statement that we put some sort of, that we consider restrictions of total free cash to be used or something to that effect, rather than with any,
no, I think we probably don't need that.
you want to take that out entirely. So this statement gets, we don't include.
Well, isn't it fiscally prudent to try to not use all of the free cash that's been accumulated in a single year, but to allow some future rollover, using it for capital expenses, ought not to use the entire balance? Isn't that what this statement is about?
That is it. That is what it's about. The reason I'm hesitating on that is that it touches upon another open agenda item, which is the town's discretion over its free cash balance, the portion of its free cash balance that's attributable to cannabis revenues.
I understand, yes.
Yeah, and I don't want to go down that wormhole tonight, just manage
Sure.
our time, but you know, we don't have a precise answer on that.
Right.
So that's why I'd be inclined to kind of leave that out for now.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
I'm fine with, I think, until we know how to manage the cannabis revenue. Waiting on that, but maybe that's something we can take up for for the following year.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, next, maintain. I think Sue says in blue, we should keep this as a goal, and I agree.
Yeah, I think what
agree.
I was trying to say is our goal to retain a AAA rating, which we're fortunate to have.
It ought to be.
Okay, so
But isn't AAA is the top, right?
right.
Yeah.
Again, you know, it's fine the way it is.
Okay.
That was what I was alluding to. We could sort of leave that the way it is. I'm trying to, you know, adding all these changes, I'm trying to, you know, chop some of them off just to keep it simple.
Are you okay if we keep that statement as is?
Which one?
To maintain our top level.
Yeah, I'm fine with
bond
that,
rating?
yeah.
Okay.
Are
Me
you
too.
keeping track of this? And,
I'm not. I'm hoping the minutes will. Is that okay?
hopefully, yeah. Well, this is recorded.
And we can
so that's
always
a
hear
good
the
idea.
recording, right? Yeah. So,
Yeah, the tax levy comment, you know, an enormously important topic in our budget process. And you know, there's nothing wrong with the statement that's in there. I just think I just don't know exactly what it means, but there's nothing really wrong with it.
yeah, I think though, I mean, I think I recall this, I think I was on the finance committee when this statement was wordsmithed. I don't know if it was originally put in there. I think it's really just, I think originally it said something, the statement was work to keep the overall tax levy low. And I think we thought, of course, we want to keep the tax levy low, but on the other hand, we also have things that need to be done. So we wanted to make a statement that the committee is always, and the town is always balancing these two sometimes competing goals.
It seems like this is probably a great deal of the discussion that goes into the budget.
Yes, yes,
Trying to balance these two goals that you're talking about.
yeah.
The
I mean,
vague sort of points to the fact that it's going to be a major aspect of the discussions. And I think that's what the budget policy is trying to say.
Well, it's a correct statement, and it just gives the committees the full flexibility to do what they think is appropriate. So that might be a good thing or a bad thing,
I
depending on your point of view.
Seems a good thing to my point of view. And I don't know how we could make it more specific. Did you have any other ideas?
I mean, I think there are some towns that have had, have quantifiable, have quantitative limits. But I don't think that would work for us. So we can keep that the way it is.
Okay, I agree.
All right, moving on. Thank you all. I agree with everybody's agreement. So then the others are just, this is just editing or grammar or punctuation. So then here is Sue, I think Sue, you had recommended putting back bullets that have to do with town should restrict levy to 2.5% increase over, these are over here on the side. And the proposed budget not to exceed legal property levy, tax levy. And you are recommending that we keep it in there. And I would be inclined to support your recommendation.
All right, well, that just relates to my comment up on the top about complying with law.
Oh, I see.
So it's sort of like we obviously, I completely agree that we should be doing those things, but that we said that up front, we're going to comply with law.
And the law is that we need to restrict the levy to 2.5% increase, correct?
Yeah, adjusted for new growth
Right.
and all that, yeah.
So this is just a restatement of the law as it exists.
Right,
I can see your point.
so it's,
Well, but it's in a, I guess I just want to say it's in a different section. I mean, it's sort of, there's the overarching goals, and then this is one of the ways that the laws get applied. And I guess I might be nervous. I mean, I think it's really important to stress that as we work on the budget, we are always trying to be mindful of what are the regulations. Sue, are you trying to talk? No go. Can you try again?
Could you text one of us your comments and we could read it into the record?
Want to call
You can
me?
call, okay.
Yeah, okay. You guys, I'm going to repeat what Sue says so that it's not felt to be anything secret.
Excellent.
Sue, are you going to call me? Oh, I think she's even logged off. Okay. Oh, she's going to try to call into the meeting. I think that's what she means. All right, let's come back to this one just so we don't waste
yeah.
time.
No, I mean, we can, I'm willing to go with the group on this and put it back in, but my last point is there's sort of 300 other pages of regulations, that we have to follow on this process that we're not adding back in here. So it's a little, I get a little bit uneasy when you do that, but I'll get over that.
But I do think isn't this proposition 2.5? Isn't that the,
Yeah.
and this is a big deal.
Okay, why don't we keep
Okay, yeah.
going down?
Okay. So Sue sent a text saying that you can go over proposition 2.5, but it would require an override an override of an override. I'm not quite, it's override per for an override. So it really is important that the language stays. So review current department fee structure and charges for services annually. And Phil, you were noting that this hasn't been done. Is this something we would like to start doing more? I think my sense is you would like to do that.
I think it's a great idea. So why don't we just say that as it's an objective to
Yeah.
review.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree.
So so you want us to say, can we leave it just as is, or do you want to put something in that says?
No, I would,
objective?
I'll go through this when we play
Okay.
the tape back. I'll just say, I just would want to reword it and say that it's an objective to review current department fee structures annually.
Okay. All right.
Again, I'm being very lawyerly here, pretend lawyerly, and saying I'd rather not say that we review current fee structures annually. I don't think we've done that for a lot of
Okay.
good reasons. We don't have the time, COVID, etc. But let's just say it's an objective as opposed to we actually do that. I mean, maybe the town staff is doing it. I don't think the committee has done it.
So, and this is the debt management policy. And I think Sue says this is a town policy. Interesting, okay. So the town, for any expenditures for capital debt, municipal buildings, WWTP, so sorry, remind me.
Wastewater.
Wastewater, thank you. Fire apparatus and school facilities are exempt from 2.5, Proposition 2.5. Okay. And then, and I think this is something that Sue has talked to us about in the past, about our debt ratio, and we have looked at it. So, yeah, unfortunately, you guys, I'm gonna have to stop sharing for a minute because I can't do well, let me see if I can do participants. Sue, are you able to talk? Sue?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, we
Yeah.
can, yes,
Hear you.
wonderfully clearly. Okay,
Oh, good. You just can't see me.
that's right. Yeah, sorry. Okay. We're gonna put back in the Proposition 2.5 language. We're down here at the debt management.
Okay, I'm gonna have to probably log back into the meeting just so I can see, but I've got it printed out in front of me, so hang on one sec.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's the ensure that the town's general obligation debt ratio not exceed 50% of statutory limit, 5% of equalization value, and is that, and these are town laws, or I think Phil was asking if it's a state law or a town, and then you put town policy for the exempt from Proposition 2.5 statement.
That is correct.
So
The
both-
bottom is a town policy.
And the 50%, not exceeding the 50% of the statutory limit.
I believe that's a recommendation of the Department of Revenue for most municipalities. I don't know if that's actually law, but I believe it's, you know, acceptable, that the Department of Revenue recommends that.
I'm fine keeping them in if other people are.
I'm good. That's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Will we make a statement as to where this comes from, or just leave it as it currently is?
would-
Well, I don't, you know, it's a major undertaking to sort of get that right, so I think we'll sort of have to leave it the way it is for now.
Okay,
Let's tackle that next year. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just make one more comment?
Yeah, please.
That last sentence about exempting those particular types of capital, that's something you definitely want to revisit. It's not necessarily needed in this community. That's really more for communities that are approaching their levy limit and levy ceiling. It isn't really necessary for Great Barrington, so it is something you may want to further look into down the road.
Okay.
Yeah, just is for the way I agree with what she's saying, because we are well under our statutory limit on the debt.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, you want to move to
Yep,
the budget
okay,
preparation process?
Okay. Budget preparation process. Oops, sorry. Sorry, hold on. I have so many windows open. Where is it? All right, here we go. Here we go. Okay. So
Recording in progress.
Are you outside?
All
okay.
right, so in an era where we're having a transition with our finance director, I don't think we need to well, I would advocate deleting the separate tab comment.
Okay, so don't do that. Okay.
You know, and I think we could add, I think Sue clarified the, you know, the budget hearing meetings. We could clarify, those are very minor points. So what, why don't we go to next page, the town budget format.
And you thought, so to delete outstanding obligations? Because we haven't usually had those, is that right? Phil?
Yes,
I have over here, you deleted outstanding obligations.
right. I just reworded that as proposed borrowings on the bottom.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Those outstanding obligations aren't the sheet that shows what our current projects that we borrowed money for, where they are in payoff, or is that not what the outstanding obligations is? Or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really, I guess my point is I wasn't sure what that was really referring to. So that's really the nature of my change. I think what to me, what was important in the budget book was to highlight what the town is proposing to borrow as opposed to what its existing obligations are.
I think it's helpful to see for people in the town to see that what the outstanding obligations are and how they get paid off. And
Well, that's what I was alluding to in all my comments on the following page.
okay, then I'll table my discussion.
Doesn't the budget book always include a list of current borrowing and the term of all the debt, or no?
Yes, it does.
That's what I thought. So it does include outstanding obligations. At least would it be better to say summary of existing debt or existing
Well,
borrowing?
again, if we're talking about, again, what I tried to do is add more detail on this topic, because I certainly agree with everyone's comments that it's very important. So on the next page, I was trying to add a little more detail on the overall topic of the town's debt, both existing debt and what is being contemplated in terms of additional debt.
Right, but this is the list of sort of information that's in the budget book. So if by taking it out of this list, isn't this
No, I
meaning?
just moved it down in more detail.
Okay, so I see. So it's just like we pull out the capital budget report.
Right, so I
Oh,
added
I
a whole
see,
section,
I
which
see,
I
okay.
proposed
I
labeling the
see.
balance sheet report. And then historical financial report.
Okay, I see. Okay, all right. So, well, I'm all for putting in proposed borrowing. I think that sounds. I mean, that's the usual.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, me too. Good with that.
Okay. Okay, so then we go down to, again, that's the stuff. So then these are the historical finances report. So this is all new, is that correct?
Correct, yeah, everything in red
Yeah.
is a new addition, yeah.
Yep, okay.
To me, these are items that, for example, the estimated local receipts, which is the cannabis revenue and the hotel tax revenue, which have become a more meaningful part of the town's revenue. I'm asking that, and Sue put together an excellent presentation with a 5-year history of that data,
Mhm.
or as much history as we had. I'm just asking that information be included in the book so that everyone could have it readily available to them.
I agree with this. Would be very helpful.
So this is shouldn't be newly created information. It's just adding existing information to the budget book.
Mhm. And some of it, like special articles already is in there, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I agree. I mean, Phil, the idea of printing out a list of delinquent properties, that is published every year, I think anyway, isn't that right? And it does include people's names, and I do feel this.
No,
could be-
I agree. I'm certainly not, I didn't intend to include that. I'm looking at some type of, very high level summary report. So that, there's always, my experience is that there's frequent chatter about, well, some people aren't paying their property taxes, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
So so I'm advocating for a very summary report, just a summary report that says X% of property taxes are delinquent. Period. I think that's a very small number.
Well, then,
I'm
should,
not advocating having, individual properties listed.
so maybe change this line to be
Right, I'll clarify that.
something that's just the sort of total amount and total number of delinquent taxes or something.
Good point.
Okay,
That sounds like an excellent addition.
I agree.
okay. And then, he was upstairs earlier. Sorry. So, and then the balance sheet. Sue, you felt we should call this something different. Any suggestions?
Well, because the items that are listed under the balance, under there don't refer to balance sheet.
Yeah.
That's what the balance sheet includes is those bullet points underneath it. Those two things don't go together, or those, whatever, 6 bullets are not part
Yeah.
of balance sheet.
So what
Yeah, I don't,
what could we call them?
obviously, I thought it was accurate, but obviously the name is not that important.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to just add this to the other historicals, Phil, under historical reports?
Okay, we could do that.
And yeah,
That sounds good because we are talking about history.
except for projected debt service payments, but that's, okay, so that's what used to be. Oh. That's what used to be in the booklet, or it has been in the
Right, so
booklet?
if you look at the above that, show 5-year projections of long-term debt, including approved future
yeah.
borrowings.
Yeah,
That was in the fiscal 21 book, but not in last year's book.
That would be a important.
okay. But do we want to move these two up to the budget book section? Because they're not historicals anymore. These are historicals, these are not.
What, mean the projections?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll create another section for projections.
okay, okay. Okay, right, so we can have that be, instead of, so we're up here at historical, say projections report or something. Yeah, or financial projections report.
Now, this is obvious, to me, this was an aspirational list. If it's too much, then we could adjust it in the future, and obviously, working with a new finance director, they may say, you're crazy. So
Okay,
that's
right.
certainly a possibility. But, again, this is what I thought it would be relevant to our annual budget discussion. Again, big picture, to me, the budget binder is the one time every year when the select board and the finance committee come together and talk about the town's finances. So I believe it would be handy and convenient to have this information in that binder readily available for people to review and discuss.
I like that idea.
A lot of this information was already available, either in the financial reports or in
Mhm.
separate presentations. It just
Yeah.
wasn't in the binder.
I think we should bring it to the select board and let's have a discussion about it.
Yeah, I think all of them are very good topics, very good points.
I
Um,
agree.
Okay, and then at the end, I just talked about, I added the points about OPEB and pension, which are part of our discussion tonight as well.
Hold on, it's just hard when it's, so you, is it realistic to ask someone to project out OPEB spending?
Well, that's a good point. It's already being done. It's just not included in the book.
Okay.
We
Okay,
have actuaries that do that.
okay,
You know, maybe we don't want to include it in the book. That's topic for discussion, but that projection is actually being done.
okay. Well, why don't we try to get it in the book, and if it's too much to get it in the book. Sue, are you trying to talk?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, okay, so let's try and get it in the book, and if it's too much, we don't get it in the book, so.
You know, last but not least, on the next page, you know, now I'm looking at my printout, so I'm remembering it better. I copied a paragraph from that the financial policy manual that was put together a couple of years ago, based by the state and town staff. And
Yes.
this was a very useful comment that was made about free cash.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And this is actually relating to Great Barrington. So I don't know if everyone has had a chance to read it. Probably not. I didn't make this clear enough, but when I rejigger this document, I'm just gonna put this a little further out front as sort of the basis for the discussion on the free cash objective.
So when we bring this to select board, we'll talk about this statement that was actually is in the financial policy manual for the town of Great Barrington.
Well, it's not the financial, well, it's in this document that was prepared by the Division of Local Services.
I see. On June of 2020?
Correct. Right.
Oh, okay.
And it's a
Okay.
terrific document and very helpful.
Okay,
It hasn't been formally adopted by the town,
okay.
but I think it's very useful to take a look at that.
Is it available on the town's website, or where do we?
Yes, I mean, if you don't have, if you can't find it, I'll send it to you. I have it.
Okay,
Phil did send me a copy of it to peruse before our first meeting. It was very
Okay.
helpful.
okay,
Yeah, I don't have a great feel for its adoption or lack of adoption, but it's a publicly available document that was a result of a lot of work by a lot of people.
okay.
Okay, I think
Okay, all right, so I think there's more free cash examples. Okay, I think so I think we have an idea of what we're gonna bring to select board. Does that sound pretty good?
right, I will, what I will do is, I will rejigger my markup, factoring in what we discussed tonight and Sue's comments, and I guess what I propose is that I would share that with Sue and ask her to help me make sure I get everything right from our conversation tonight. And then we can submit that to the select board.
Excellent.
I don't
Yes.
think we have the time to show it to another full meeting of the finance committee.
No,
Right.
I'm
Does that
good.
make sense?
Yep, I'm good with that.
Yes. Sounds
same
good.
here, all good.
Great, okay. So thanks for going through that slog. And then just to try to get Sue freed up. She sent out her last budget reports through June 30th, 2022. And Sue, do we still have you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions on those budget reports?
No,
Um,
no,
So,
Um,
go ahead.
Yeah, Sue, my question is, we seem to have a lot of money left over.
Yeah.
Well, there's the free cash.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but
That-
is that because the bills haven't come in yet, like for things like electricity? Or is that real money?
So, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, okay. So no, this is the final year-end fiscal 22. So obviously I wouldn't be producing the report if we still had to pay some bills. And if there were any bills that got carried into the new year, bills that we didn't receive, that would be in the encumbrance column.
right.
So you can see if you go to the last page of the report that there is 1.7 million in turnbacks, is how it's referred, budget turnbacks. And yes, that goes directly to free cash. That is only one factor of free cash. But that is that's a good portion. That I can tell you, I was able to do a quick analysis. That is probably the highest year of turnbacks we've had since, well, the second highest since 2016.
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
part of that is, my guess is because we couldn't fill staff positions quickly enough.
I can highlight for you real quickly. I'm flipping through my own notes. Some of the larger turnbacks were the police department was roughly 100,000. One of the big factors was in the school in our annual assessment.
Oh,
They ended up having to return $448,000. It's actually from the prior fiscal year, so they deducted off of our assessment, and that has to do with what they're allowed to have in what's called their excess and deficiency, which I believe is basically similar to free cash, but they're only allowed to have a certain percentage, and anything above that percentage they have to return to the towns that are part of the district. So you'll notice I do not know what page it's on because I don't have it in front of me.
is
or
this
I can-
the BRPC assessment?
No,
No,
the
no.
school.
Yeah,
Berkeley Hills Regional.
Yeah,
Go
I'm with-
to, in 1 second, I will get there. It is on page 7 under education.
got it. Oh, this makes sense.
that-
Yes, okay.
Yeah, that's a big driver right there of why we have so much in turnbacks. Both the highway and, so both DPW budgets, highway and public buildings was about 190,000, and that was net of the deficit for snow and ice. Council on Aging was roughly a $60,000 turnback, but that is because of the grants that she received this year and the revolving fund with the transportation. So we were able to save the operating budget money.
Mhm.
And then, of course, Phil's favorite, the health insurance. That was roughly 560,000 in the overall insurance budget. I believe that's probably second to last page.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, right here.
Okay.
Did we have any, I hear thanks for your comment there, Sue. Do we have any way of knowing that if that is a larger or smaller than what you would have expected for that excess?
I can answer that in a bit of a different way, Phil. I have it comparable to prior years. I have a report that I keep by department for budget turnbacks that go all the way back to fiscal 16. And I will say that again is the second highest year after fiscal 16, but it's pretty comparable to last year and fiscal 19. We've been around 550, 540, so it's comparable.
Okay.
So it's about 5.3% of the budget is sort
I
of
think it was higher
excess.
than that.
Richard, at a very high level, that is essentially a reserve account. that exists within the insurance line item. So it's been
I
there
see.
every
I
year.
see.
And I've been critical of that. Just, I love the reserve account. I've been critical of the way it's sort of labeled and how it's housed and described. And I would advocate that we sort of break it into its pieces and label it a little better, but that's a discussion for a future date with a future finance director. Okay. Are there any more questions for Sue?
Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
well,
Nope.
we can let you go then, Sue. I know you have another commitment. Appreciate your time and appreciate you showing up tonight, even though you really, you didn't have to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Sue.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
kind words.
Yeah.
And yes, of course I would show up tonight. I still feel obligated. So, good luck with the rest of the meeting.
All right, thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Sue, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Bye, Sue. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, let me go back to item 4. Mark, is there anything you'd like to chime in on your items? I know you're still trying to get us an update on the cannabis tax revenue, and we're still waiting on that. That's out of your control. Are there any other items you'd like to comment on?
No, I did reach out to David again today and just get that question back to the top of his emails so that we can schedule a meeting. I also asked him if we could schedule that meeting prior to the next finance meeting so that I don't have to, keep telling you one more meeting. I know this is, we have time. We really don't need his feedback until we get started with the fiscal 24 budget, but the sooner the better in my mind.
Okay. And can you comment briefly, now that Sue has left the meeting, maybe it's appropriate for you to comment on sort of your contingency plans for having someone in her seat, basically if not doing her full job, then doing the minimum required aspects of her job so the town can pay its bills and keep the lights on.
Sure. I guess I would start with just letting you all know that we did post her position last week. So we're getting out ahead of it and trying to recruit aggressively. Our HR director will be spreading the word, casting a very, very wide net in the next week or so. And in the meantime, I've been reaching out to some firms capable of providing some interim municipal accounting services to us. So I'm starting to have those conversations now. And my thought is that while we seek a new finance director, town accountant, we'll have an interim firm in place to make sure that the vendor warrants, the payroll warrants are all processed timely.
Okay, well, that sounds like you're on top of this, and
We'll
you'll
keep the wheels in motion here.
Thank you. Okay, I think let's move on to item 5. This was my doing. Really briefly, I think we all share concerns about the developing situation with Housatonic Waterworks. It's been going on for a while, and it's been discussed in great detail in various public forums and private forums. So I don't think we need to sort of go through that gory detail right now. But I guess my concern is that, and frankly, some of this came from discussions I've had with people who ask me what the finance committee does on this topic, and my response was, we're very concerned, but we're largely unaware of what the town may be contemplating in terms of taking action with respect to Housatonic Waterworks. We hear the general guidance that Mark has provided in public meetings with the select board, but other than that, we don't know the detail. Obviously the detailed deliberations on what the town could potentially do have been undertaken in executive session, which I completely agree with as appropriate. No argument there. It's just that we're, as a finance committee, we're left in a situation where the select board is contemplating certain actions or not contemplating certain actions that may have a material effect on the finances of the town going forward. In a variety of ways, either, we don't need to go through that, but there's a variety of actions that the town could take that would have material financial impact on the town. So my concern is I think we should be a little more in the loop on these deliberations, particularly with outside advisors. So I just asked a question to the open meeting law question desk at the state level. And I did that via email, and I included that in the packet and basically said, can we be involved in those, we participate in those executive sessions? And they said, as you can see in the email, if the select board authorizes that, we can do that. So my proposal, and I guess my motion is that we send a letter to the select board, basically requesting that we become involved, or as a participant in the executive sessions discussing Houstonic Waterworks. I would think we should have the ability to listen, ask relevant questions, perhaps. Obviously, we would not have the right to vote on anything, where that's the select board's authority. But I think we should be a little more aware as to what's being discussed, in order to understand the potential financial impact to the town. So that's my proposition. Let me throw that out to the group for discussion.
I guess, Phil, are you asking that the entire finance committee attend the executive sessions, or a representative of the finance committee attend the executive session representing the finance committee? Or is there any sort of precedent or preference for either one?
That's a very good question. I've thought about that myself. I mean,
Yeah.
hypothetically, I thought about, well, maybe should I do it or you do it alone?
Mhm.
Then the problem is that then you can't tell anything. You can't pass.
Right, no, I
any
understand. Yeah,
information.
I understand.
So I'm not sure. That's not a perfect situation. I guess where I came out is ideally I would think each member of our committee should have the option to participate in those meetings. Perhaps they don't want to, for potential conflict reasons or some other reason, they just don't want to participate in that executive session. They shouldn't be compelled to do so. But I think the members of this committee should have the option to participate, provided that they adhere to the constraints of an executive session, that they cannot discuss matters that they hear, with anyone else. They need to keep it private. So I would propose that each member of the committee have the option to participate.
Phil, could we get it's not a ruling, but could we get some sort of statement from David Dineski about this? Because I think it could be a slippery slope. It could, if it could endanger I'm hypothetically, but it could kind of make it sticky with the select board in executive sessions. I'm wondering if David Dineski could offer some advice.
And I guess I also just want to, I agree with Madonna, and I just also want to suggest, I'm assuming most executive sessions have to do with questions about how we're going to proceed in a sort of legal fashion, I'm assuming. And
Lawsuits, yes.
Yeah, and I understand, I think the place where I agree with having I guess I'm leaning toward the idea of a representative. I can understand from the perspective of those participating in the executive session, that people coming and going who don't regularly attend could really hinder the process, right? Because you don't know what was discussed at the prior session, and then you have to ask a lot of questions. But I think if we had someone who I think could at least represent the finance committee. And I will say, Phil, I'm leaning toward you, but who could represent the finance committee in that it's not that you make a vote on behalf of the finance committee, but bring the finance committee perspective to the discussions. Because I don't see how this will not have financial implications for the town, whatever direction we go, even if it's huge legal expenses. And that we as a committee trust that you as our chair are voicing what you know to be the committee's concerns. And again, doesn't mean you represent us in terms of that you know what we think at all times, but that you represent the financial perspective of the town. That would be I think having personally, I'm not sure I could commit to attending every executive session that happens. And then I worry about coming and going. Because I don't want to be the person who comes and goes. And again, Steve is in the audience, is an attendee today. So Steve, if you want, Steve Bannon from the select board. So Steve, if you want to be promoted to a panelist, just raise your hand. Or Mark, I don't know if you have an opinion on this.
No, the only thing that I would mention is that depending on the board's vote tonight, we'll be meeting an executive session on Monday night, so I can bring this forward at that time.
Okay. Steve has raised his hand, so give me 1 second.
Yeah, I have no problem with one or all members of the finance committee being there. I think it's a little premature. We're not at a discussion about dollars and cents yet. So I'm not sure that it would be have much use right now, but and I do worry that a lot of our discussion is about strategy, legal strategy, that really doesn't involve the finance committee at this point.
So could we just get a report at this point?
It would have to be an executive session, the
Right.
report, or
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I see.
I guess,
Yeah.
I mean, is there anybody on the committee who would like to attend executive sessions, these executive sessions regularly, and feels that they could invest that time?
I
Well,
can't.
this was my doing, so I obviously I'm willing to do that. I don't want to be presumptuous that I should do it alone, but I wouldn't have proposed this if I wasn't willing to sit in on those discussions.
I mean, Steve, I guess my sense is that, I think it's not, by the way, it's not at all that I don't trust that the select board will think when should the finance committee be brought in. But I think if there's a member of the finance committee who's sitting in on the executive sessions, they're the best person to say, this has implications for the finance committee, and this might be the moment to have a joint executive session that we could work out.
yeah,
What do you
I'd be glad to, as
Yeah.
Mark said, I'll be glad to bring that to the full board in executive session on Monday.
I don't think, do we need to write a letter or something? Is enough that we put this forward or make a vote? I don't even know if we need to make a vote on this.
I think Mark and I can bring back your wishes.
Yeah, I agree.
So Phil, what do you think? The idea that the chair of the finance committee sits in on executive session discussions regarding Housatonic Waterworks as a way to sort of represent the finance committee on the deliberations discussions?
I'm fine with that. I appreciate your confidence, but I'm fine with that idea. One technical question is why would this specific question need to be addressed in an executive session?
That's a good one. Yeah.
I was just suggesting that we're meeting an executive session on Monday. That will be the next opportunity for the board to discuss Housatonic Waterworks and
Okay,
our strategy.
all right.
That's
I
all.
don't think there's anything.
Yeah, I agree.
Just discussing whether or not they want to let me listen in to the executive session, that doesn't seem to be warrant an executive session, but I take your point, Mark. Thank you.
And I guess, Phil, if there's ever an executive session that you can't make, and you feel it would be very, just knowing what's coming up, you'd feel it'd be important, I guess I could sit in just to be there and report to you after if need be. Or someone, I guess someone on the select board could report to you since you would be attending.
Okay, well, that sounds right, although I think that particular nuance, we'd have to sort of
Okay,
think about a bit and make sure we
Okay.
don't mess that one up.
I
But,
agree. Right. Well, yes.
Yeah.
So I think everyone should know, right? You know, I live in Housatonic and I am directly affected by the Housatonic water situation. So,
Yeah, so from the conflict
You're right,
perspective.
you're
and from the
right,
open
you're right,
meeting law
you're right,
perspective,
you're
you know,
right, you're right.
It can get complicated, but I
Yeah.
agree, big picture, I completely agree with what you said.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get in trouble.
No, I agree. I agree. I think I will not be attending executive sessions.
Okay, so Mark and Steve, I appreciate you saved me a letter writing exercise there, and thank you for considering that request.
No problem.
Okay, then we'll,
Could we
Move-
skip to item number 8 before we go to item number 7?
Great.
Because I think 8
Yep.
could be pretty quick as well.
yep,
So 8 is having a representative on the Community Preservation Committee. And I guess, if you don't mind, I guess I'd like to make a proposal. I'm a little anxious about taking on that committee, but I know that we have 2 new members, Rich.
Well, my understanding is these are quarterly meetings. Am I correct about this? These are not monthly meetings? I believe I
Uh,
saw that somewhere previous,
yeah,
I-
they're not monthly. I'm not sure if they're quarterly, they're
but
sort
they
of
might
more
be every other
episodic.
month,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
They probably meet on a more regular basis during the application season.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
When we're
It's
getting
seasonal.
closer to the, okay. Well, I know that everyone else has the extra pots on the fire, and I'm happy to look into doing this. I just want to be sure that the days they meet and all, I'll probably go on the town website and find out what their regular meeting schedule is, or do you know that already?
Yeah, do we know it?
Well, I would, as an alternative suggestion, I would volunteer Chris Rembold to have a call with you, which was very easy for me to do since he's not on the call. But
That's
he-
exactly what I was going to suggest. as well.
He runs the process. He's does a huge amount of work, does a terrific job, and I think he could provide you with a summary set of information about scheduling and burdens on sort of workloads on his members that would sort of help you make an informed decision on that.
I'm not against being involved in it, just so that I understand.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Yeah. no.
And I mean, I'm happy to be the person who falls on this particular sword, especially if you're going to take on Housatonic Waterworks. And I know that they're, well, so enough said. If
Yeah.
I can
Great.
probably,
Yeah. So we've all volunteered Chris to spend some time with you on the phone to
okay.
help you understand the process a little better. And Mark, could I ask you to just let Chris know?
It's on my notes here. Will
Okay.
do.
Thank you. He has my phone number then, and he'll just give me a call. Okay, thank you.
So we're not at the point, though, of voting on a member or a representative. to
It
the
doesn't
committee,
sound
is
like it. We need to give Richard.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
We've
Well,
made a lot of
okay.
I
progress.
mean,
in that direction.
you can vote me in to do it. Because I know that it's not as big a commitment as the finance committee. But we're
Okay.
just there listening in. Are we voting on part of it? Either way, I don't think I'm a huge part of that committee, correct? Or am I actually a member of that committee then from the finance?
No, you are a member of that committee as the standing member from the finance committee. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
Maybe I ought to wait for Chris Rembold's call, but probably it's a go. So.
Okay,
let's-
well, we can revisit it then in September, maybe.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so then moving back to item 7, OPEB, other post-employment benefits. And I will And we've been going at it a while. I'm gonna try to do this quickly.
Yes.
And if we need to pass it on to another session, then so be it.
Do you want me to share some screens, Phil?
So share some,
Do you want me to share the screens, the page?
yes, please, yes,
Document,
please.
yeah, okay.
So,
Sorry, guys, a lot of scrolling through. Okay, here we go. So this was the document that came around just prior to the meeting.
right. So exactly. So
Right.
I forgot to put this in the packet and,
Oh, okay.
let's just leave it there. All it is, and I try to make it simple. So we're talking about OPEB is primarily the expense for the town's responsibility to provide a portion of the expenses relating to retired staff medical insurance. And just for context, there's two numbers that float around. The bottom one gets discussed a bit more, frankly, and that is the accountants say that in our financial statements that the total present value of the liability for these benefits, looking at 2020, is 20,597,000. So that's a big number. And what that is the actuaries and the accountants, actually it's the actuaries, are projecting the town's annual expenses for these benefits for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years and discounting it back to today. So that's what I mentioned earlier, that those projections exist. It's a very, it's a projection for 20, for 40 years. So it can change significantly based on how you change assumptions, but that's the number that's in the town's financial reporting. A number that's much easier to understand is what is our actual expense for each year.
Yes.
And that's typically referred to as the pay-as-you-go expense for retiree medical benefits. And on the top half of the page, that's the annual expense, the actual cash that the town pays for these retiree medical benefits. And it's basically a portion of the cost of the insurance. The retirees pay a piece and the town pays a piece.
And Phil, can I ask, this is what the town pays, correct? This is the town's contribution.
Right, this is the town's
Right.
portion, yeah.
And can I just ask a question? I don't know, and I apologize. How can it be a projection back to 2017?
Well, no, the top of the page is, these are actual numbers, so this is not a projection.
No, but these are.
Yeah, that number, the 20,597 is basically the accountant saying, well, what do we owe this year and for the next 50 years?
Right, but when does this comes from a document from August 2021. And this is what they thought we would have as liability in 2017.
Right, yeah, so every
but in
year it's
fact-
basically the actuaries or the accountant's best estimate of what that liability would be for the next 50 years. So there's a bazillion variables in there. It's
But I guess I don't understand.
the-
2017 is not a would-be, it happened.
No, well, again, the 2017 number of 15,700,000.
Yeah, what is
What the
that?
accountants estimated that year as to what Great Barrington would have to pay for the next
Got
50
it.
years. Right?
Oh, okay.
Well, it's a very large figure that takes into account a lot of assumptions. And
Right.
it is
So
a 50-year period. So, I mean, the number of what we're actually paying seems to have more relevance than such an inflated figure of
Yeah.
50
Right, so,
years.
I mean, so the 20 million number, it factors in the projected inflation rate for medical expenses. It's projecting when our employees are retiring, when they're dying, how long they're living. There's a bazillion variables in there, so that's one reason why that number will vary significantly.
Okay.
But do you
Um,
find that number to have any realistic value in considering anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary number. It makes you
Very.
think
That's
about the
just because
topic.
it's so large. It doesn't have any actual meaning.
It's an estimate. I mean, I think that's the best way to look at it, and it
Well,
changes
and
dramatically.
it breaks
But
down
it-
over 50 years to roughly what we're paying every year. You know, it said after 50 years, 21 million breaks down to 420,000. So it's in the 400,000 range.
Mhm.
So it seems that, you know, it's an unnecessarily scary figure.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
it's not like we're out of balance with it. If we just took it at face value and divided it by 50, we're close. So don't be afraid of it. It's just a number.
Yeah, I mean, it's in there because the accountants say
Yeah.
we need to put it in there.
Right.
Okay.
But it is, you know, it is instructive. So the question is, you know, we'll talk about in a minute, we've, for the last 40 or 50 years, our town and our county has been reserving money to meet our pension obligations, which is a whole separate benefit. And we've done a great job of reserving against that. And
Uh-huh.
we're in good shape. It's a great story. Partly because we were compelled to do that by law 40 or 50 years ago. So it's in stark contrast to the medical benefits where we haven't reserved. So the question for discussion is, do we want to start putting money away in a similar way as with pension funds to create a dedicated reserve? And then the next page is just basically the pros and cons. And you know, this came from other sources, not just out of my head, just doing some research. And just to highlight the first one on the pro is it provides more insurance that the funds will be available to pay for those future benefits in future years. So if I was a recipient of those benefits, I would want there to be a rainy day fund at the very least. Rainy day fund, a dedicated reserve account to make me feel better that I'm going to get those, that the town will have the money to pay for my benefits in the future. The argument against funding is that it's basically creates a new expense item for the town. And it requires money, and that money either comes from higher taxes or from something else, from reducing something else. So it's not free. So there are other considerations in here, but to me, those are the important ones.
It doesn't cost us, oh, go ahead, Madonna, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, didn't I hear somewhere that there's unfunded liabilities at the school as well, in the school district? Does that affect us?
I mean, that is true. Yeah, the school, the school district has a similar commitment to these benefits to its employees as does the town. It's not included in the numbers that we just saw. The school district basically is financing those benefits on its own, in part from our tax assessment. The other angle that has been mentioned is that other aspect is that if for some reason the school district couldn't pay those benefits to its retirees, then that obligation would fall back on the member towns. That's my understanding. So it's a big number, a very material number, but it's not technically included in the numbers that I just showed above.
But the numbers you showed above on that sheet were actual pay-as-you-go figures that have been paid over the last few years.
Right,
So
that's the actual dollars out the door for the last couple of years, yeah.
So is your concern that, especially speaking to the first pro, more assurance that funds will be available? Are we projecting to have more than the amount each year in that fund, or establish an amount that sort of takes into account what we've projected to have to pay that particular year, and just put it into a separate fund and then pay it out of that fund?
Big picture, yes. I would say, first of all, I have not seen any projections of what these annual costs will be for the town. They do exist. I have not seen them. So my guess is that they project that these annual costs go up materially, but I don't know that. I would say that I'm surprised at how modest the rate of increase has been over the last 5 years.
Yes.
That was my main
Mhm, I
surprise
agree.
in all of
Mhm,
this. It's actually
mhm.
very much, if very much under control, at least for these last 5 years. I don't know why. I can speculate, but that's not appropriate, but it's under control. It's not when you look at that number, it doesn't scream that it's a crisis. That's my
Mhm,
opinion.
mhm.
Right, where
Mhm.
does this number fall into the budget right now, since there is no OPEB separate fund?
It is in my understanding, that's back to one of my
I
hot
think it's
topics.
in, I think it's in insurance, is that
Yeah,
right? I
yeah, it's
think
it's
yeah,
included in
that's my
that.
recollection, yeah.
I
There's
see.
one line item that includes the medical insurance for retirees, medical
Mhm, mhm.
insurance for current staff, and it includes that reserve account that we just mentioned a few moments ago, and some other smaller items as well, but it's kind of lobbed in there. So you have to go to the actuary report that the town makes public to see this actual line item.
I see. So it's a little hidden. It's a little hidden.
Yeah, it's not as
Yeah.
granular as I would advocate for.
Right, right.
I wouldn't use the word hidden. It's just not.
No, it's not as easily obtainable. It's not
That's a
spelled
better
out
word
on
for
a
it.
line item, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
So we've
So-
made these commitments. These are, etched in stone. We've made the commitments to these retirees and medical. And right now, we're basically, we're doing okay funding it, but we're not. Yeah, I mean, if it gets out of control, then we got a problem.
No, that's a fair point. I think and I've tried to think about that a bit. I think the unfortunate reality is that it's a problem for not just for Great Barrington, but for a lot of states and municipalities. And 2 months ago, I put another table in the packet, and I repeated it here. Is basically, when you look at, there's a lot of data put out on this topic. When you look at this topic statewide, basically on a statewide basis, all the towns and the state, this liability is funded 5.9%, which means it's 94% unfunded. So we are not alone in not funding this liability. Let's go to that OPEB page 3, which is the pension fund.
Yep, give me a second.
Yeah, it's handwritten. Oh, yeah, one back there. So I did a horrible job of making this accessible. I apologize. I spoke to, this is just a quick snapshot of the pension fund, which is a long, boring topic. Well, I'll try to cover it really quickly, given the interest of time. It's a good story.
Okay.
By law, the Berkshire County had to start reserving for its pension obligations 30, 40 years ago. I don't remember the date. Our pension obligations are run on a countywide basis, and we participate in that pool. It's a bit, it doesn't work the way I would have expected, but there's a methodology to it. As of the end of 2019, our funded, the countywide funded ratio is 93.5%. It's right in the middle of that page. Which means that we are, as of that point in time, we were 93% reserved for the pension liability, which is a stark contrast to the medical liability.
Mhm.
So that's a great story. Now that number moves around a lot based upon, it's all, the reserve account is invested a lot in stocks and bonds, and they're all going to move around a great deal. So that number will bounce around, but it seems to have bounced around in the 80 to 90% range. So, and it'll probably, I'm speculating that it's probably lower now, given what happened to the stock market, but in general, it's a very good story and we should feel good about that. I spoke to the head of the County Retirement Board, Sheila La Barbera. She was incredibly helpful. And I'm going to see if she'd be willing to speak to the committee at some future point just on this topic, on the pension fund. But so the story here is very positive. And actually and then on the bottom of the page, you could see this is basically the town's annual cost for the pension fund. You can see it's, roughly sort of close to twice the medical benefit.
Right.
Mhm.
So is your vision to have this OPEB fund be in the range of the 50% projection?
No, I think my 2 cents
Yes.
is
2 cents is not going to make a dent in the.
But
my
it-
sense is it's I would love to fund for this, but the money doesn't come out of thin air. It's a
Right.
very costly endeavor to start reserving. My 2 cents is we need to, from a process standpoint, the state tells us everything we do here has to go through town meeting. So it'll be very carefully thought out and voted on by the town. But my 2 cents is we should try to give this topic a little more airtime in the budget process and think about putting away a relatively small amount of money each year, just to start reserving and just to make sure that there's a very strong awareness of this obligation that the town has, and the need for potentially the need for some type of dedicated reserve account. So I spoke to the treasurer of Lee a couple of months ago. They put away, I don't know, $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 a year, depending on the year. Order of magnitude, I think that's what I would advocate we consider, because it's something that we probably can allocate money to without a huge amount of pain elsewhere in the budget. And I think it's just the right way to start the process.
Phil?
Please,
Phil,
I'll shut
I'm
up.
just, no, I'm just wondering, is it our purview or is it our, not even duty, but can we make suggestions that when the boards and, all the police and fire to maybe have their budget shrunken by something, or they put things, instead of getting a new cruiser every 18 months, that they expand it to, 2 years or 3 years or whatever, maybe would that make a difference? Or is it just, you're just going to make everybody mad?
I think it would make everyone mad. I don't think that would go over very well. I understand what you're saying. I respect that thought, but I think if I was in the police department, I would say, well, these are my benefits. You guys need to come up with the money, and you shouldn't sort of reduce the budget of the annual budget of the police department and penalize the citizens of the town for these benefits that you've committed to me. It's a very, it's a dicey topic.
Yeah, it's,
I don't want to go anywhere near the issue of whether or not these benefits are deserving or worthwhile or appropriate or the right size or any of that. That's a
right.
very separate discussion. I don't want to go anywhere near. It's really about how the town pays for these things over time.
Right.
The biggest benefit to having this fund would be that it can be invested. So, I mean, if it's invested well, it's helping to pay for it. The
Right.
more we take a commitment towards this than just with the other one for the pension, as you saw, it's so successful because we started putting money into it, and that investment makes it more viable and sustainable.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, I would agree. I think that's a very good way to look at it. If you never start saving for something, you'll always be at zero. But if you start, then you wake up one morning and it's 10 years later and you have a big pile of money there.
And this is really something where you're looking at as a 10 to 20-year project to actually fund it sufficiently that we're getting near that
Agreed.
actuarial's amount. Yeah. So again, that big amount looks so scary, but as in our personal budgets, we have to do small things that are going for it. But I think it's very well placed that it will be a fund that can continue to grow aside from the money we put into it. So that
Agreed.
makes a big difference. Yeah.
Agreed.
And I guess I just want to dovetail with that. I mean, I think it's really taking a long-term perspective on the town's finances. And, I think it's important to do that, to think that Great Barrington will want to be able to pay its retirees and people who've contributed to the town. But I do think again, I think it makes me go back to that statement in the financial policy and budget policy that says we work to keep the overall tax levy reasonable in consideration of other priorities and goals. And that's how we have to discuss this. When it comes up to what I'm not, by the way, I'm all for start creating setting up the fund, but we always think about, well, what does the year look like and what can we contribute this year, given other expenses, right? And I think, there might be a year where there's, right, a department doesn't need something that they usually need, and we can try to figure out, or we have revenues exceeding some projections and that we feel we can make a contribution.
No, that's a great point. That's really very important to me, because if we have a good year, then I think it's important that this particular topic get consideration in the budget process of benefiting from that excess, along with maybe reducing taxes or spending money on this or that. It should be part of that conversation about how we allocate money for each year, be it a good year or a bad year. And the only way, I think, from a process standpoint, the only way that would happen is that if we set up this trust and just make it an explicit line item every year in the budget, okay, are we putting money in the kitty or are we not? And
I mean, this is when we set up the capital stabilization fund, this is how we thought about it too. And I think, Mark, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think not the 2023, but 2022 budget, I don't think we put anything into the stabilization fund. We felt it was a year we couldn't, if I recall correctly. I may be misrecalling.
We did skip 1 year, but
Yeah, but there was
think-
1 year, maybe it's 2021.
yeah, I think
maybe?
it was 21. I think we did
Yeah,
get back
okay.
on track after that.
Yeah, exactly. There was a year we just felt we couldn't make a contribution. So I think if we think about this in the same way.
Well, if I could speak to my experience coming from San Diego, my pension and all of that, and all of these kinds of medical expenses was in the city itself. They did not have any of these discussions, and they did not prudently create accounts to make sure that the money was put aside sufficiently. So in a city of 3 million, they dropped the ball and they ended up having an enormous explosion, which wrecked the entire system for all its employees. It was a terrible, terrible thing to go through, to watch all of our friends on the city side suffer because the city did not set money aside for its obligations. So, we are in a great position that we're paying the bill. And this is just something that would make that much more viable and actually help us in the long run as a town to continue to pay those bills. Because the more money we put in and the more it's invested, the larger that account gets and the more stable it is. So this is a wonderful thing to consider.
Just to flip to page 5, last page on this is just from a process standpoint, everything about this is going to take a long time.
Sure.
So that's why I'm advocating sort of getting started. Page 5, yeah. So just setting up the trust even without any money in it requires town meeting approval. This
Mhm.
is my, let me be careful. This is my summary of a state document that talks about state law and how this process works. So this is my summary. This is not prepared by the staff. The trust requires town meeting approval. And then the town meeting approval is required to put money into the trust. And then you also need the town meeting to approve using the money in the trust. So everything goes through town meeting. So that's, so it means that it will take some time, and we only have one shot every year. So I guess my at the beginning of the recommendation would be, this will take a while, but let's start the process by proposing that we put the establishment of the trust on the town meeting agenda for this coming year. It obviously needs to go through the select board first, but I think our recommendation should be.
Well,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, Phil, I didn't mean to interrupt, but why don't we, we are planning to go and meet with the select board about the finance policy. Why not bring this up to them at that time about the idea of putting it on the warrant? And again, I think we don't yet have the language. I assume this would be some sort of, I guess just setting up the trust itself would just be a warrant item. And then if we want to propose putting money into it, that would be part of the budget process and would be a special article, I assume. Does that sound right?
Right. Yeah, that sounds right. And actually, this state document that I've linked here, it has all this language in there, that proposed warrant language, and it
Okay.
has all the how-tos in there.
Yeah. We can see how the time is for the select board on the 19th. We could also do this on one of the first days of our budget hearings. That's another option, I would guess.
Yeah, there's a number of approaches. I would advocate that, and I will volunteer to put together just a one pager on our recommendation, and maybe we can confirm it at our next meeting or two, and then we would give it to the select board. I think they could probably.
Okay.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I think we should probably give them something in writing.
Okay.
Not too long,
I
not too
agree.
short.
I think we're a little early for the night.
Yeah,
I
okay.
agree, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not a rush, because we can't do anything until next May. So-
Right, till the budget season, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
right. So, if we wanted to be, if town wanted to be ambitious, it could try to simultaneously approve money going in and the trust. I don't know if that's even possible. We could figure that out, or Mark can figure that out down the road.
So Phil, it sounds like you're volunteering in your to put in the time to make that one-page summary,
Right, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
right? Yeah.
That's good.
All right, sounds good. Phil, I just want you to know, Phil, I have to tell you, as a former chair, and I've talked to a lot of former chairs of the finance committee, every single chair has talked about wanting to do this. And so I'm so grateful that you're actually taking this on. This is
Okay, well, I
huge.
appreciate that. I think it's,
Yeah.
it's an important topic. I've spent some time on it in the past and other roles, and so I had a little bit of a head start, but yeah, I appreciate the comment. Okay, we already did item 9. Item 10 is just our meeting schedule, just FYI, so I
Good.
think that's under control.
Oh, hold on. I'm just does everybody see those?
Yeah, I haven't changed anything. These are the meetings that the schedule that we.
Yeah, these are
discussed
the
previously.
standing meetings. Yep, yeah.
All right, item 11, citizen speak time. Anyone hanging in there with us at this point?
I do want to acknowledge that Kathy Couch has been an attendee. And Kathy, did you want to speak? I appreciate your attending the meeting. And if you'd like to say, is there anything you wanted to add? No? Okay. All right.
All right.
Kathy's not raising her hand.
Okay, seeing none, any media time? Any questions from
We
our
do
media?
still have someone here from the Berkshire Edge, so just to give it a minute.
All right, seeing none, I think we can move to adjourn.
So
I make a
moved.
motion. I second.
I agree.
Agreed.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for their
Agreed,
time.
agreed.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Thank you. Thanks all. Bye.